Hey, hey, if you can hear me at all, just please comment in the chat. I'd love to see if the audio is working fine. Perfect. If everybody just wants to comment where you're from, that'd be great. So I'm from the nice, warm metropolitan area of West Fargo, North Dakota. Fun to see where other people are dialing in from. This is the first time I've actually hosted a webinar on Zoom, so we're going to be learning a little bit together. So South Dakota, Washington, Kansas, Nebraska, Minnesota, Manitoba, Florida. Oh no. Got some more Minnesota, Nebraska, Mississippi, Colorado, North Dakota. Well, welcome. Welcome everyone. And so really the goal of what I have planned for today is to just give an overview of Harvest Profit. It's been a while since we've done one of these webinars. It's maybe even been more than a year. So just going to walk through Harvest Profit. We've added quite a bit over the last couple of years, really with the goal of trying to give you better visibility into the bottom line of your farm. I'm a pretty firm believer that more visibility leads to more confidence and more proactive and ultimately more profitable business decisions on the farm. And so today just wanted to, just chat and walk you through the software and answer any questions. So just a general overview session. We're going to host, this is the first of 4. And so next week, the same time, we're going to take a deep dive and show you some of the scenario analysis tools that we've added to Harvest Profit, where you can compare different crop rotations. You can compare adding land, letting land go, adding equipment to your operation. You could really add a lot of different functionality to your farm. And so that'll be next week. The third week, we'll be talking about our machine data integrations and how you get those started, and some tips and tricks and troubleshooting with bringing in as applied data into your Harvest Profit account for purposes of calculating cost of production and profitability. Then the fourth week, a little bit up in the air, but we're planning to launch a new feature, so I plan to talk about that then. So with that, once I had somebody raise their hand, so I'm learning a little bit here. Now it looks like maybe not. So comment any questions you have in the chat, and we can I will answer those probably at the end. So I will go ahead and share my screen. So first of all, just a brief overview of Harvest Profit and what we're going to talk about, really what our mission is. And to keep it simple, we are farm cost and profit tracking software. You have, more than likely, you have access to a lot of different information in 3 main categories on your farm. There's lots of different data available to you. 1, lots of agronomic data, yields, as applied rates, product prices, product usage, soil maps, satellite imagery, lots of different visibility into the agronomic side of your farm. More and more visibility into the operation side of your farm. So equipment usage, miles per hour, miles per gallon, bushels per hour, all of that great data. Those 2 are obviously very important. Number 3, you likely have lots of visibility into the transactions that go on in your farm business. So what are the individual revenues and expenses that your farm is incurring? Hopefully you're using some accounting software like a QuickBooks or a Xero or one of the different farm accounting software. But where a lot of those things tend to fall short is, let's look at the numbers side of the farm correlated with the time cycle that you're operating in the crop year. So let's look at field by field profitability, cost of production, and ultimately we're trying to help you answer a bunch of different questions on your farm. So what's your cost of production? What's your field by field profitability look like? What's your P&L look like if you add or drop a farm? Are cash rents or crop shares more profitable? If you're planting, more of a certain crop, like if you push your rotation one direction, how does that impact the overall overhead distribution on your farm? And then answering a lot of questions related to grain marketing. How much do I have sold? How much do I have delivered? What's my average sold price? What happens if I sell more? So really trying to help you get more visibility into the number side of your farm to help you make more confident, proactive, and profitable business decisions. And so some of you are familiar with this, some of you maybe aren't, but harvest profit gives you total farm profit loss based on the crop year in which you're farming or the production cycle. So I tend to think of it as easier accrual accounting that has both a rear view focus and a forward looking focus. True accrual accounting on the farm is hard to beat from a historical analytic perspective, but that's like driving with your hand over your face, not looking out the windshield. So we want to help you better understand what's worked for you in the past and what's looking like it's going to work for you out the windshield. So both that forward looking and projection, the projected profitability. So you can go down to the field by field, you can look at crop by crop. We take into account all your grain contracts, your hedging. We pull in data from John Deere Operations Center, FieldView, LibreCart to help bring in data from other tools you're using. Next week, we'll talk quite a bit more about scenario analysis. We pull in Chicago Board of Trade and the ICE market data. We have a little bit of work to do on canola, and then also a pretty extensive grain inventory management. So with that, I'm just going to jump in, and we're just going to kind of freewheel this here for, and I think I set an hour and 15 minutes. I doubt if we are going to end up with a full hour of conversation here, or a full hour and 15 minutes, but I just wanted to dive in, give you a pretty extensive overview of harvest profit and see if it's, one, we'll ask some questions at the end. Two, see if it's a fit for your operation. Three, if you're a harvest profit customer, but maybe not, maybe you haven't spent the time that you wanted with the software, maybe this will jumpstart your interest and answer some questions you have. So with that said, harvest profit is really, like I said, a tool for giving you the better visibility into the number side of your farm. And so when you first sign up for harvest profit, we take you through an onboarding process. Let's see if I can actually just pull that up here. So I already have an account that's set up. So this is going to be a little bit counterintuitive, but this is my demo account. So anything we're seeing here isn't confidential, or it's meant to be realistic, representative farm data. If you see some of my fertilizer prices and things, you're gonna, wonder where I was able to secure some of those. So don't focus too much on the numbers, but more on the functionality. So here's the onboarding. You can add multiple entities to your farm. So if you farm with a brother, parents, sister, another business partner, you can manage all of those different entities within Harvest Profit. We can connect your account with the agronomic data that you are already capturing. And so if you sign up with either a John Deere Operations Center or a Climate Field View account, we will automatically pull in your organization, your grower, your farms, your boundaries, your fields. And so we will populate that list for you. If you don't have one of those, you can just go ahead and add your fields to your account here. We have different, just to get your account kick-started, you can enter in your crops, you can enter in budget prices for crops that don't have, that aren't connected to CME or CBOT or ICE data. We use a budget price to set your unsold bushels for crops that are connected to, corn, soybeans, spring wheat, hardwood winter wheat, soft winter wheat, rice, cotton, canola. We track your unsold bushels using those relevant futures markets, and then we attach a basis to it. We'll talk about that more in a bit. And then you can just go through and get started. So really it's entities, fields, crops, and some initial price settings, and then you can just hop right in. And so we will hop right in to my account, which is populated with data. And so just going down the list here, in Harvest Profit, I'm going to go into my fields. And so I have a list of fields here. I can assign a land cost. And so this can be a per acre rent. This can be a total cost. You can include, if you want this, if this is owned land, you can include a payment here. Maybe you own 500 acres with quite a bit of leverage, and then you have another 500 that's owned free and clear. You can spread that cost across those fields, however you want to best do it. That's a little bit of a question we get on. Well, if I own some land and I rent some land, how do I do that? Well, it's a bit of a mix of art and science there. I tend to favor spreading the land cost out across those fields so you can get a better, more representative view of your field by field cost of production. And then we have the ability to do crop shares in Harvest Profit. So I'll show you that real quick. If I go here, I can enter in a new agreement. So I can just call this crop share. Then I can say, okay, my landlord gets 30% of the crop, and they pay 30% of the fertilizer and 30% of the chemical, but they don't pay any of the seed. And they don't pay the application cost on chemical, but they do pay the application cost on fertilizer. So if you see, we've added a lot of functionality here to where you can really help manage those in-depth crop share agreements. I would say roughly 25% of our farms utilize crop shares, maybe a little bit more, but we handle a lot of the flexibility that comes along with this. So I will get out of the crop shares. The other thing that we can handle is entity splits. So if you have multiple entities in your farm, you can split those fields, say 50-50. So if you have if you are farming with a business partner and you each have an economic ownership of the field 50-50, you can assign that here as well. And one of the other things that we've really tried to focus on is trying to make a lot of this stuff easy. And so, for instance, this is my land cost for 2022. I can go ahead and I can take these land costs. If I just want to, if I'm first in my Harvest Profit account, if I just want to go ahead and apply a flat, $170 an acre, I can just go ahead and do that $170 an acre, and I will set that on all of my crops. Sorry, my password tool here is getting in the way of some of this. So I just set it to 170. Makes it pretty easy to get started on just to start actually seeing some actual data in your account. And maybe the other more important thing is we can go ahead and copy this stuff to next year. So we've really tried to focus on not having you have to set up a bunch of data from year to year. You can take data and you can copy it from year to year to minimize the pain in the butt that it is to have to retype that in all the time. But we know things change. And so we try to be really intelligent about what data that we allow to persist out into perpetuity and what data we just keep for the current year. So for example, when we first had Harvest Profit, if you were to archive a field, it would essentially remove that field from your entire account. Well, I want to look at how that field performed in 2021 and 2020 and 2019. Why would I remove that? So now if you archive a field in Harvest Profit, it removes it from the current year and future years, but it keeps it historically. So a lot of those little nuances that come along with the real world of farming, we've put a lot of thought and effort on trying to manage them appropriately. And another one is copying land costs. So I can go ahead and I can copy my land cost to 2023 or 2024, or as you see here, I can copy them to different scenarios. So we can have different scenarios within one crop year, and we'll talk about that a lot in next week's webinar. So that's land costs. Let's hop over to inputs. So this is a I hesitated even showing this page because a lot of these prices are are going to be out of whack with today's reality, and I laugh, but maybe I should cry instead of laughing. And so here, if we go and I have all my chemical prices, I have fertilizer prices. I'm going to skim over this pretty quick because these fertilizer prices, I don't want anybody to start dripping tears onto their keyboard looking at some of those fertilizer prices from last year. And on my farm, corn, soybeans, and wheat. So I have, I just put in, just to keep things simple, I just put in corn seed, what the cost is per unit, beans, wheat seed per bushel. And the other thing we do is we have overhead expenses. So let's go here and look at, here's fuel. So I have $2 a gallon, and I'm using 7 gallons per acre for corn, 5 gallons per acre for wheat, 5 per acre for soybeans. You can change these in. I can say, all right, I paid $2.50 for 20,000 gallons. I paid $3 for, that's 200,000 gallons, for another 20,000 gallons. So I have a 275 average fuel price. And so you can manage your purchases, and you can do this on seed, fertilizer, and chemical as well. We don't have input inventory tracking in Harvest Profit. Starts to get pretty complicated when you're tracking every single purchase and everything, single expenditure. And so what we do is we calculate your average price across your purchases, and we apply those to the fields. So on this farm, I just have an employee, Steve. His fully burdened cost is $70,000 a year. We apply that across all fields, all crops. Here I have just some overhead. I just wanted to keep this simple. So I have $100 for my corn, $70 for my soybean, $70 for my wheat. I just put in $150,000 of depreciation here. Once again, all crops, all fields. The other thing we could do is we could do, let's say we have tile, and we have, it's a $20,000 a year payment, and it just goes to one of my fields. And then we could say grain dryer. We could just assign that to corn, and we don't have any irrigated corn, but maybe we're going to install pivot. So anyway, you can assign expenses to one, some, or all your crops, or one, some, or all your fields. So, and then once again, you can assign these things to entities. So maybe you have this $30,000 payment is assigned to Harvest Inc., but then Harvest LLC is the tile. So you can really slice and dice these expenses in a lot of realistic ways. Same thing you can do with repairs, and then you can add in miscellaneous revenue. So maybe I have, some custom farming. It's not really cost, but we have, whatever, $25,000 in custom farming revenue that we can apply that to all of our crops. And then you could include that, your custom farming equipment in the expense line item. So that's inputs. Next thing would probably be our crop plan. So once again, here I have all of these fields assigned to Harvest LLC, but you can assign them to the different entities. Steve is a fictitious name that just sounds common. So that's, I'm not really sharing anything confidential there. And then I can also assign these things to 50-50. So this would be, if I have, for this entity share, I go over here, I have two 50-50s. It's Harvest Inc. and Harvest LLC. So I can go back and I can pick, okay, I'm going to assign my my Eagle field to the 50-50 entity, which would be 50-50 Harvest Inc. and Harvest LLC. How we handle those is we take all of your variable expenses and we assume that they are split 50-50. So we share just to try to keep things simple. One of the hardest things we have at Harvest Profit is how complex do we go, or where do we stop and say things are good enough? And one of the assumptions that we've made here is that we take your variable expenses and we lump them into one bucket. So the entire farm is buying fertilizer, seed, and chemical, and then we'll split those up into different entity shares, into different landlord shares, if that's how your farm operates. So that is the crop planner. Set my crops. You can have multiple fields here. So if you had, if this was winter wheat, for example, don't have winter wheat on our farm, but we could go ahead and we could add soybeans. So we could represent a double crop here really easily. So you can have multiple simultaneous crops. You can have double crops. You can plant multiple crops to the field. And then once again, you can take these things and you can do bulk actions here. So if you have, some of our farmers are farm in areas where the fields are smaller, so you could, bulk assign your crop shares, your entity shares. You can bulk assign your crops. And so we've really tried to, one, add a lot of bulk functionality, and two, once again, add a lot of copying functionality from year to year. So if I go, the next important thing to understand with harvest profit is, well, how do we take those inputs, the per unit price of seed, fertilizer, and chemical, and how do we calculate your cost of production? Good question. So for my farm here, I've created 4 different application templates. So let's just go and take a look at corn. So for corn here, I went here and clicked this operation. So I've added 4 different operations. Once again, this is for my 2022 budget. So I have a dry fertilizer application. I have planting. I have a side dress. I have spraying. So this is my corn template. And then we have this pretty important here on the bottom. You can automatically apply this to your fields based on the crop that's planted there. So if I go back to my crop planner and I change this to soybeans, I'm not going to do it just for simplification purposes now, but it will automatically swap out my corn template with my soybean template. And that is pretty powerful functionality for when you're going through and building your initial crop budget. So this year, for example, high fertilizer prices, people are really, looking at different crop rotations and potentially trying to, maybe maximize something that isn't so intensive with fertilizer. So you can go and you can say, well, my east quarter here, my Eagle field, I'm gonna go to soybeans, my Bull Butte field, I'm gonna go to soybeans, and then we'll automatically change the agronomic plan to your soybean plan. And then the other important thing about the applications tab here is this is where we bring in your, we're going to talk about this in a couple weeks, but we will bring in your agronomic data from either Operations Center or Climate Field View. Say you planted 33,000 seeds per acre for corn, or a bushel per acre for wheat. We take that usage rate, we match it up with your product price and harvest profit, and then you have your per acre per field cost of the data that's coming from your machine. So in all reality, what a lot of people are starting to do here is, this is my 2022 crop budget. So I essentially have 4 different operations on all of these fields here. So you can see I have my 4 different applications. What I would probably do with my, synced up to my Operations Center account is I would go ahead and lock in this case. So this is my base case, my default scenario. I would go ahead and add a new scenario here. This is what we're going to talk about next week. And I would just say, 2022 actuals. So then I would go back I'd create this scenario. It would take what I have here, my 2022 budget, it would copy it all over to a brand new scenario. So I have these 2 scenarios that I can compare to each other. And I would go ahead and I would simply just delete the applications that I have in my account. Or you could go in and you could say, all right, I have my fertilizer applications that have come in. They'll show up in this column, and then you can add them into your account. So I'll go ahead and, I could go into each account. I could say, all right, I'm just going to go and delete my all of my fertilizer applications, and I'm going to replace them with what actually happened. Or you can just go ahead and delete all of your applications and replace them with what's coming from your machines. So there's a lot going on here, but we've really tried hard to keep this as simple as possible and give you a fine level of detail into your into what it's costing you to fertilize, plant, spray, prepare, harvest a crop. You can also add in different applications here. So you could say, I'm going to spread lime, or I'm going to, you can add in, just miscellaneous per field expenses here. We used to not have the field selector on our inputs tab for overhead, so people would apply their overhead here. That got messy. We spent a bunch of time and added that per field selector to the inputs tab. So one other thing, hopping back to the inputs tab here, I go and look at now I have input totals. So I can look at, all right, on my farm, I'm projected to use 197 tons of fertilizer. So I can use this for budgeting purposes. Okay, I'm gonna need about 200 tons of urea for my 2022 crop. You can set up your 2023 budget. So you can say, all right, based on my current crop plan, I'm gonna need 235 tons of urea, and you can use that for purchase decisions. If I was in my actual account, I could look in and say, it looks like I've applied 194 tons. And you look at your bill from your supplier and it says, well, why am I being billed for 210 tons? Like, what's the difference? So you can start to dig in and define discrepancies on what's been actually applied to your account versus what you've paid for. So I have to, I'm going to hop into take a little bit of a breather here and hop into the chat quick and answer some questions. It looks like Ben is in there, so thanks, Ben. So currently we had Gord reach up. So currently he was asking about, is it possible to track plot trials within a field? Plots would have to be out. They would have to be entered as individual fields. I don't like to promise things, but right now, Harvest Profit is a really great best-in-class tool for doing field level performance, and that's where it stops. It doesn't go subfield. We want to change that. That's all I'm going to say. So we understand. Yeah, there's lots of different applications and benefits to being able to take this to a subfield level. So you can. So Steve asked. So Pete asked. We do not track input inventory, and one of the reasons we've had people come from systems where you track input inventory, and lots of people have found that quite hard to do, tracking every single purchase. And then you have to start to account for how you're going to do your costing rate. So is it LIFO, FIFO, average cost? You have to reconcile your inventory. So if you ever go into a retail store, they have like Post-it notes everywhere. They're reconciling their inventory. And so it takes a lot to get that right. And that isn't a core use case for Harvest Profit. So can you add multiple crops? Like we have lots of different crops, Jim. Yep, you can add alfalfa. You can add in custom crops. You can really add in whatever crop you want. So any crop type. We try to stay away from specific units. So for example, if you have alfalfa and you want to track it in tons, or I don't know, maybe you have just square bales, I guess you could track it in square bales. So as long as you're consistent on the metrics on how you track the yield and the price, you can add any kind of crop that you want. Steve asked, can you split overhead costs by crop? So if you go into our, we're in the inputs tab here. You can't split them by crop, but you can, you can say, maybe Steve spends half of his time on cattle and half of his time on crops. You could say, all right, Steve is at $35,000 for corn, soybeans, the spring wheat, and you could have a cattle enterprise in here, and you could say 35,000 for cattle. So you have to create separate line items for each bucket, but yes, you can split them up. So then this is the this is the overhead page that Michael's asking about. I've been overly simplistic here, but I just have overhead for corn, $100 an acre. You can break this out. You can add custom categories. So if you go into the settings tab in Harvest Profit, I can go into inputs here, and you can add in really any kind of custom category you want. So yeah, whatever you want, you can add it in. And so you can customize this, quote unquote, chart of accounts any way that you see fit. Pete asked again about input inventory tracking. It's on our roadmap, but it's probably not going to happen in the next year or two. So I try not to overpromise and underdeliver. So I'll underpromise there, because that's not something we're probably going to work on at least this year. So Blake asked maps under fields. I'll just say that going subfield geospatial mapping is pretty high on our priority list. So I'm going to leave it at that. Jared asks, can expenses be applied to fields as total per application, or does each application need to have a price? So here's a quick thing so we have it per product, just because I've seen people end up overpaying by a considerable amount when they are just given per acre prices. And I know that I'm maybe fixated on the 1% of times that occurs, but that's why we went ahead and have it by per product. And so, for example, here's what you could do you could say, all right, corn, I have corn chemical. You could say it's $28 per gallon, and I'm not going to save that. But then I can go to my applications tab here on the templates. I could just go ahead and say, my spraying, I just have 1 gallon per acre of my corn chemical, and it would apply to all your fields. So obviously wouldn't give you your input usage, but you could just, it's a way to reverse engineer some of the math. So you can do the same thing on fertilizer. You could say, my corn fertility plan is $147 an acre. So you just say that's $147 a ton, and you apply 1 ton of that. Obviously, that type of logic isn't going to play very nice with your as applied data, but you can definitely use that in Harvest Profit if you like. So you can track diesel fuel per field. You could have a generator per field on the inputs tab. So you could have irrigation fuel, and you could break it down. You could have individual line items for each one of your pumps, and you could assign that to each one of the fields. That would work pretty nice. So David asked about the crop planner and operations center. That is on a roadmap. We don't pull that right now, but we will be pulling. Yeah, that's pretty high up on our roadmap as well. So I'm going to just pop out of the questions for the time being, and we will get back to the tour of the software here. This yields tab is visible only to me. So hint, hint, there's some stuff coming there. I'm an admin, so that's available to me. So we won't talk about that now, but well, I don't really care. We'll be pulling in yields from starting with Operations Center here later this year. So that's in the works, pulling in yields. So let's just go to our P&L. So you saw all that, all of the work, how we get there: inputs, applications, crop plan, crop shares, entity splits. Here's the final piece of analysis. Not the final piece of analysis, but here's my P&L for my farm. So I can look at my break evens for corn, soybeans, wheat. I can look at my average cash price. And this is where things get pretty interesting. So I have 58% of my new crop corn sold at $5.50 average cash price, and I have 42% vice versa. 57%, 58% unsold, 52% sold. Here's my prices. Here's how we're calculating this unsold price. So I'm using December futures minus a 40-cent basis. And so as prices change, these numbers will update. And so what I've seen happen a lot in the past is if you sell some commodity, we'll say wheat, sell wheat for 6, you sell a little bit more for 7, a little bit more for 750, and then it gets to 8, it's just say, I'm done. The market keeps punishing me for each one of my sales. I'm done with this. Doesn't make any sense to sell anymore. I have enough pain. I've endured enough pain on my marketing. I'm just going to ignore my marketing. Well, then you go into your harvest profit account. You might have started the year at a, $11 an acre profit. Well, the market has rallied even with the sales you've made. Your farm might have gone from a $47,000 estimated profit to a $470,000 estimated profit. So should we be ignoring our grain marketing, or should we be looking at ways that we can lock in a little bit more of that price? And so once again, we calculate your weighted average price across what's sold and what's unsold. And so, okay, let's look at this sold. So 42% sold. So I'm going to hop over to the contracts portion of harvest profit again. So here I have 42% sold, 110,000 bushels sold, which would equate to 71 bushels per acre, and an average cash price on what's sold to $5.24 a bushel. So here I have 50,000 bushels forward sold. I have 230,000 bushel hedge to arrives. Once again, we've tried to think about what you want to do with the software when you're using it to match it up with the actual use case of your farm. So let's say the spread between March futures and May futures gets wider, and you don't necessarily need the cash. So yeah, let's just roll this ahead here. We're gonna roll it to May. We have a 5. The basis or the futures price is now 586. You added the spread, so we added. No, we'll just add 10 cents because that's more fun. So now we have our March 23 HTA has turned into a May 23 HTA at a 589. And then you can go ahead and we could say, okay, it's time to, the basis is good. I have a 30-cent under basis. Not basis is going to vary everywhere, so don't fixate too much on that number, but your buyer calls you and says, we really need corn now. Okay, well, we set our basis here. It's now a cash sale. We got a 0 basis on this bad boy. So we've now turned that into a cash sale with a 0 basis. And so we now have we've gone from a March hedge to arrive, rolled it ahead to May, set the basis, turned it into a cash sale without having to have you re-enter in these contracts. And harvest profit before, you'd have to delete the contract, re-enter it, delete it again, re-enter it. What a pain in the butt. And so we made that much better. There's lots of examples of this where if you go back 3 years ago, used to be a giant pain in the butt. Now it works as it should. There's probably still a handful of pain in the butts in the software today. We'll get those fixed. And so looking forward again in a year or two, it'll just be a continuously evolving way that we're approaching, improving the software. A couple other things we can do here. We can go in and build a grain marketing plan. So you can set different targets. You could see, okay, these are stale here, but you could say, all right, if I hit these 4 different price targets, or I want to add another target, it would equal, okay, my average price is, I have to go and set those targets again, but you can set different price targets and try to take some of the emotion out of that earlier example of when the market goes from 6 to 7 to 8 to 850. You can say, okay, if each one of these hit, that's $172 an acre profit for my farm. Like that is a great outcome versus being frustrated. So this grain marketing plan will pull in futures prices across the crops that trade on exchanges. You can go in here and we can calculate some different what-if analysis. So here on my farm, I have on the top axis here, I have cash price per bushel for my unsold bushels, I have future yields, and I have my different crop insurance metrics here. So I need to update some of this stuff. So let's say 80% crop insurance, 550 spring price. Let's just go ahead here and say say I have nothing sold, because so it's pulling in my app what I have sold here. So nothing sold. Just say my expenses are a little bit higher, so $750 an acre. So you can say, okay, if it doesn't seem likely, but wild things happen in the world of commodities. Let's look at $4 and 160 bushel corn. So this would be a slightly lower yield now, or slightly lower yield than what I have planned in, and obviously a much lower price. So $100 an acre of risk. So if I go back and replace my 110,000 bushels of sales, 160 and 4 is now break even. So by selling 42% of my crop, I've taken my risk from -100 to essentially break even. Maybe you have others involved in your farm. You could say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to export this. So maybe I'm farming with my brother, and he fixates back on, remember when we were kids and we got wiped out in 1988? Well, yeah, I remember that. But what if we get quite aggressive here and we sell 200,000 bushels, and our average price goes up to 550, and I don't see too many numbers here that I would be unhappy with. Looks like there's a little hole here down in the bottom where your crop insurance doesn't kick in yet, and you're oversold, so you're having to repay some of those contracts. But you can go ahead and just export that. So you could show a partner in your farm or your lender, here's where my Whatif analysis is, and I'm anticipating to do I don't know what I did here, flip the screen. So yeah, this highlights, we have PDF reports sprinkled throughout the software that are formatted. Here's my really simple Horeb Farms logo. You can have a logo in here, so you can go and present input usage reports, P&L reports, application reports, all branded to your farm. It's kind of neat. We have a full inventory tracking feature. I don't have anything here. I have just a few different loads. I'm just going to say we're going to make a new video and talk about this. This is a pretty in-depth feature that has a lot going on, and so I'm going to just save this one. We'll just go ahead and add this to one of the future videos. It has some settlements. It has a mobile app where you can have people take pictures of scale ticket, enter in scale tickets. It doesn't actually optically recognize the characters, OCR, but it's a pretty intensive feature. In all honesty, what we found here is that a lot of farms really want to find that quote unquote first destination report. So where did all of my commodities go for crop insurance reporting purposes? But then when actually calculating all the outs, doesn't quite get as much use. So then you end up with this stale inventory. And it's kind of the reason why we stayed away from input inventory, where if you don't accurately manage every in and every out, the inventory quickly turns into something that just isn't relevant for your farm. We added the inventory. In all honesty, I love the P&L tab. Inventory tab is great for a lot of our farms. I'll just leave it at, we'll talk about this in another video. I'm more than happy to answer questions here, but it's a big feature, and we can talk about that at another time. So yeah, once again, we can answer questions here, but I wanted to end this a little short and give you all plenty of your day back. So last feature we have here is a balance sheet. So it's a market value balance sheet. So we necessarily didn't, a lot of double entry true financial accounting software leaves land stale. It doesn't include updates on your growing crop. So one of the neat things we can do here in Harvest Profits, we can pull in your growing crop. So we can calculate kind of a real-time working capital. You can track your different pieces of machinery. So really, the goal here is I can go to my lender and I can bring in, here's how 2021 worked on my farm. Here's my 2022 budget. Here's my balance sheet. And oh, by the way, the neighbor down the road is thinking about retiring. And so has 777 acres that I might have the potential to rent. Here's what that looks like on my farm. And so you can have a really thorough overview of what's in the past, what's to come, run different scenarios on what's to come, and then as well have your balance sheet. So, we don't write checks in Harvest Profit. This isn't a QuickBooks replacement. We really want to help you make better decisions, not necessarily just to submit compliant tax paperwork. And so that's really what we're all about at Harvest Profit. And so going back to our little presentation here, the details on Harvest Profit is the pricing is $1,600 a year. That includes unlimited support. If you go to harvestprofit.com, you can try a free trial. If 14 days isn't long enough, just ping us, shoot us a message at support@harvestprofit.com. We can extend that. We're pretty flexible, easy to work with when it comes to all of this stuff. I say unlimited support. We've never had, in all reality, nothing is probably unlimited. I think we've had one customer ask us about 1,000 questions, and we've answered all of them. So we're more than willing to do whatever we can to help you get your account set up, troubleshoot questions, help you think about your farm specific nuances and apply them to Harvest Profit. So we've really tried to focus on, let's invest in the software and supporting it. We're pretty light on sales. And so we don't have a sales team that's going to be beating down your door. We just want you to try out the software. Is it a fit? Awesome. We'd love to work with you, but we don't want to convince you to use something that you aren't sold on. So really go to harvestprofit.com. You can try a free trial. If you go to harvestprofit.com/call, you can sign up for a call with either me or Ben. Ben's our support guy, a product expert. We have Jarrett. You might even talk to one of our software engineers that man support, or just shoot us an email, support@harvestprofit.com, sales@harvestprofit.com. We do whatever we can to help you out. So I'll go in and we'll answer some more questions here. So somebody said, Steve asked about data. Harvest Profit's data. We were acquired by John Deere, so the data is it adheres to John Deere's data policy. It's your data. We don't sell it. Currently, Harvest Profit's database is completely separate. We use completely separate systems. The software is completely separate. And yeah, we're an autonomous team with autonomous systems, and that's gonna be likely to continue here for the next couple of years. And really the thing that got me excited about Deere is they want to build farmers better tools so they can get more value out of the data that's coming off of their equipment. And this is a tools play. And there was literally, whenever you go through an M&A process, I sat here for lots and lots of time during that process. None of it was focused on, literally 0 minutes, 0 seconds were focused on, what kind of data do you have on your farmers? It was, let's look at your code. They wanted to make sure our code was good. We had really crazy experts come look at our code. Yes, our code's good. Our numbers are good. So anyway, long story short, we're focused on building the best tools. This is a tools play, very next to nothing on data. So Misty asks, I'm figuring break-even point. Is there a way to control is there a way based on only acres we control of? For example, we have 160 acres that are 50-50. So technically when we're figuring our break even, we would actually only have 80 of those acres going towards our bottom line. So you could either use an entity split here on the applications tab. So, or on the crop planner. So you could do this 50-50. You could essentially just like throw 50-50 off to that other entity. It can be an unnamed entity, or you can have it go to your landlord, and that'll take all of your all of your variable costs and split them 50-50. Or you can create a crop share and have some of your expenses get split 50-50. So you can definitely do that either through the crop planner, which has the entity splits, or the fields page, which has the crop share. So Tom asked where we're at with the bushel integration. So Tom, that's been kind of a bit of a, bushel is great, but they tend to just think about contracts and quite different than us. And so when you import a contract from Harvest Profit, you have to, or when you import a contract from Bushel, you have to change all the attributes anyway, because they don't have, they don't have the concept of crop year like we do. They have different contract types. Nothing against them. They're doing it the best way to fit their customers. And then on grain tickets, yes, we have that. That is something that's on our roadmap. It's gotten pushed out because, frankly, we found that the grain tickets they're a bit more fragile than what we would like. So, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of progress there. Not a lot of progress. I'll just be honest with that. So Carrie asks, is it being videotaped? Yep, it's videotaped. First time using Zoom, so I don't know if I have to automatically send out or if we have to manually send out the recording, or if they're automatically going to send it out. We'll probably manually send it out anyway, so you might get it twice. I apologize if that happens. And then Jim asks, if we sign up for the free trial and enter all of my data, yep, it remains. So if you sign up for a free trial and do a bunch of work, and then you forget about it, and you say, oh, shoot, I want to sign up for Harvest Profit again, we keep all that in there. And if you want us to delete it, we'll go ahead and delete it. But what we found is they might spend a Monday evening entering a bunch of data, and they forget about it. And 2 months later, they say, oh, I entered in all my fields. Do I have to do that again? Nope, we save it for you. So trying to be as helpful as possible. So yes, Tom's focused on, Bushel is a company that makes an app that ties into grain accounting systems so we can pull contracts and tickets. So frankly, we need to revisit that conversation, Tom. So thank you for bringing it up again. What we found is that more integration lead to more points from the software breaking. And so we're highly cautious on doing more integrations. But with that said, more integrations are to come. We're not narrow-minded enough to think that farmers aren't going to use multiple systems. So do we use any of the aggregated data to provide benchmarking? We do not. And one of the main reasons for that, well, there's two reasons, just to keep things private. That's been one of our selling features, is we don't do any benchmarking. We just want you to see your data and you make the best decisions. But then maybe just as important is we have some farmers that do. We have a younger, pretty progressive farm that started using the software, and he had sent in I was just looking through, who's used the software, just some generic, like, who's used the software lately, who needs help with it. And this farmer hadn't used it in like 9 months, and it was right when I first started Harvest Profit. Like, geez, he was so excited about it. Why isn't he using it? Well, their farm has gone through, it's called some family changes. There's been some people going in and out of the farm. The leverage has changed a lot. And so they use Harvest Profit solely to have more productive conversations with their bank. They don't pick it up again until the next December, January, where they're revisiting those conversations with the bank. So their Harvest Profit account looks full and flushed out, but it has no actuals in it. It's all budget. We have some people who do no budget and all actuals. Some people who have a kind of semi-complete version of Harvest Profit. So long story short, the data it's not like QuickBooks where everything in there is real and actual. You have these different states that the data is in. And so that complicates the picture a little bit. So that's my answer to that. So yeah, would love to, just wanted to do more of this, and would want to, we just want to do more getting out there. Jim asks again about different pricing. We've tried to keep things simple. If you're a smaller farm, just getting started, or it's just a side business, reach out to us. We don't have necessarily hugely custom pricing, but if somebody's in that 500 acre range, shoot us an email, sales or support@harvestprofit.com. Ben asks about growers. Do we have any plans to work with advisory services? Yes, I'll say yes. We would. I think there's an opportunity. One thing that I found is, I'm just going to not share my screen here for the moment. So one thing that I've found is that we've had issues with, and it starts with me. I started this to be able to do more consulting work. What I found is, by the time that I asked for, can I get your cash rents per field? Can I get your seed cost? Can I get your application rates? It was just as easier and maybe more productive for the farmer to do it themselves. And then the farmers who did it themselves found that it was pretty fun. And so it was kind of pulling, it was like scratching fingernails on the chalkboard, trying to get all the access to all that data. And so what we found is that if the farmer doesn't own part of the process, it's really hard for a consultant to get the data they need to operate it. It can happen. We have some really successful consultants using Harvest Profit. And so if you're a consultant, or if you're an advisor or a dealer, we can work with you to help you manage subsets of your grower accounts. So if you have 7 customers that use Harvest Profit, we can help you manage those 7 customers and access their accounts with their permission. And then over time, there might be some, we're thinking and iterating on some different features that would involve, hey, we have these consultants at Harvest Profit. Here's a package that would include using them. But as of right now, there isn't anything formal there. So, yeah, we are, we hear you that a flat price punishes some and rewards some. For us, one of our main competitors has a $10,000 minimum price. We are way under that, and so we unfortunately just have to we found a price that works for most, and unfortunately for some, if you're pricing is hard. So I've spent many hours laying in bed thinking about pricing. So for those that have issues with our pricing, I hear you. We're going to be, I'm constantly thinking about it. We're thinking about it. So probably, maybe more to come there. But yeah, I hear you. So Corey, you just sent a message in. I hear you. Understand. I wish we could come up with the perfect pricing model. We did have a price that was a per acre price, and nobody signed up. And so it was, to keep things simple and not have a sales team, we had to pick something that it was easy. So anyway, I appreciate everybody's comments, questions. Want to get back to doing more of this video webinar stuff, not only on the software, but on other thoughts and ideas. And so I can tell you that we are just constantly trying to make the software better. We get lots of comments and questions, and so we can't do everything. We can't even come close to doing everything. But at the end of the day, we just really want to help you make better decisions. And when you have very little control over weather, no control over weather, very little control over, no control over where the future market's going to go, that uncertainty can lock a person up to indecision. And that's where I think opportunities for failure become amplified in the farm. And so we want to give people the knowledge and understanding to help make just more confident, proactive decisions by giving you more visibility into the number side of your farm. With that, thanks everybody for joining. We will be sending out a recording. I appreciate all of our customers that are on this call, everybody who is interested. It really means a lot to me, and our family here at Harvest Profit. So with that, have a great rest of your day, and thank you for your time.